Greetings. I'm Shirin Bezin, Vice President of Business Development at Tech Change.
And I'm Manisha Aryal, Global Practice Lead for Digital Development at Chemonics.
Manisha, it's great to see you. You've been up a while. What has stood out to you in these first hours of GDDF?
Right. So we started GDDF at midnight with a conversation with Nalaka Gunawardene and Royal Raymond from Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka, as you know, has been going through an economic crisis with citizens out in the streets. It was fascinating to hear how digital democracy is playing out there, how Sri Lankans are using social media to organize, to nudge their leaders, and to make their voices heard. And we had some awesome breakout sessions following that about digital inclusion, best practices, building better abuse reporting tools, about the future of elections, digital ecosystem resilience in the Pacific, about capacity building and funding for locally led digital development initiatives. And just half an hour ago, I had an incredible conversation with Mark Alabusiku and Sakar Puraseni, who started entrepreneurship hubs in Haiti and in Kathmandu. Their recipe for building a resilient tech ecosystem was a combination of enabling policy, regulatory environment, infrastructure, entrepreneurs, human resources, investment, and pre-entrepreneurship skills or pre-entrepreneurial skills. So I know I'm running out of time, but all these conversations, the fabulous breakout sessions, the lightning talks, the tech demos, all of these will continue to live on this platform post GDDF. So please be sure to visit them when you can.
Thanks, Manisha. What a rich recap and start to GDDF. We now have two fabulous must-see lightning talks from Usaid before we invite Administrator Power to the main stage. From Usaid's Senior Policy Advisor and Team Lead for Digital Strategy Implementation, Michelle Parker, you will hear how the Digital Strategy Implementation Team is preparing for the strategy's long-term success. This will be followed by a lightning talk on tips for e-government proposals. Michelle?
2 years ago at GDDF, I introduced USAID's digital strategy, which launched just weeks after the COVID-19 crisis pushed us all into lockdown, a watershed moment where the world quickly recognized the importance of digital technology. Now, entering its third year of implementation, the digital strategy is deep in the process of transforming how USAID and its partners think about and engage with digital ecosystems. To explain where we're going, I'm first going to take us back a few years as to why we created the strategy. USAID has worked in digital development for over 10 years in sectors such as global health, financial services, and digital connectivity. This work grew organically out of the needs identified in the field. However, as the digital revolution continued to expand, it was clear the agency needed a comprehensive agency-wide approach. And that's where the digital strategy comes in. Through the strategy's formation process, agency staff, our partners, and the public identified 17 areas that represented ways for the agency to grow its digital practice, like cybersecurity, digital literacy, protecting children and youth from digital harm, and digital government. Over the past 2 years, the digital strategy focused on building a solid foundation in these areas, establishing baseline definitions and common frameworks for USAID and the development community. So what's changed since the strategy launched in April 2020? Well, the very first significant achievement is that we defined the digital ecosystem through the Digital Ecosystem Framework and developed resources to help staff and partners understand and responsibly engage with the digital ecosystem. We're sharing this framework and those resources broadly with the development community to create a common set of terms and definitions as this sector matures. The Digital Ecosystem Framework serves as the core of our digital development approach. For example, the Digital Ecosystem Country Assessment, or DECA for short, uses the framework as the foundation for USAID missions to understand the risks and the opportunities in their partner countries' digital sector. So far, 22 USAID missions are doing DECAs. Join the DECA session today at 10 a.m. EDT to learn more about this incredible tool. Next, 16 missions have received $5.9 million through USAID's annual Digital Ecosystem Fund. Missions use the framework to demonstrate ecosystem-level impact in their proposed activities. For example, USAID Benin partnered with the Ministry of Health to strengthen supply chain logistics of health commodities like medications by upgrading the paper-based process into an electronic information system. Another major area of emphasis in the first 2 years was building the USAID of tomorrow through a number of human resources efforts that elevated and integrated the role of digital technology within USAID and the broader development community. These include establishing a Chief Digital Development Officer position in USAID. This first of its kind position for a bilateral donor guides the digital adoption of the agency's programs and its delivery of development and humanitarian assistance. Our agency's first Chief Digital Development Officer is Christopher Burns, who also directs the technology division in the Innovation Technology and Research Hub, and he's my boss. Next, we established a cybersecurity team in 2021. The team is responsible for growing and defining cybersecurity as a development sector and leading USAID's strategic work in this rapidly changing field. The first of many products from the cyber team is the cybersecurity primer available on usaid.gov. In missions, we're growing the digital workforce through helping missions hire digital development advisors and working with technical sectors to support digital technical specialists. As you can see, we've built a comprehensive approach over the last 2 years. Now, we're starting to scale these efforts by zooming out from the 17 initiatives to integrate this foundation with the agency's ongoing and future digital work. We'll do this in a few ways. First, by creating new products and tools to expand technical expertise, including digital action plans for all USAID sectors, to identify digital trends, and to provide guidance on focus areas for our workforce. The Bureaus of Global Health and Resilience and Food Security lead the way. Their published plans are available on usaid.gov. 5 other sectors are currently developing their digital plans that should come out this year. Also, this summer, we will launch the Digital Ecosystem Evidence Map, or DEAM. It's a searchable database of digital development evidence from across the digital ecosystem. You can get a sneak peek of this system during the GDDF tech demo. Second, USAID is looking to empower the next generation of digital development professionals. We're looking to build digital development curriculum into international development graduate level programs at US universities and colleges. We recently launched an activity working with various universities to identify the best way forward, and will continue expanding this partnership to conduct this important work. Finally, investing in digital public goods. At President Biden's Summit for Democracy in December of last year, Administrator Power announced USAID's plans to help support the development of a charter for digital public goods. This is a multi-stakeholder initiative that seeks to advance the creation and adoption of safe, trusted, and inclusive digital public infrastructure at scale. Join the GDDF session today to learn more about the charter and how you can get involved with this process. This is just a very brief overview of where we've been and where we're going. We have so much to look forward to over the next 3 years of the digital strategy and beyond 2024. For those of you from our partner organizations or other donors, we welcome your collaboration and feedback as we charge ahead to harness the digital revolution together. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. To respond to a growing interest in e-government and e-governance, in 2021, the Technology Division in USAID's ITR Hub launched a rapid research effort to help us answer the question, what can we learn from past projects to improve our future programs? Today, we want to share with you what we learned. With support from Digital Frontiers and our consultant, Chrissy Martin, 21 USAID staff were interviewed on their experiences managing digital government activities. We also conducted a rapid desk review of reports and work plans from 39 past and present projects. So what did we hear? Today, our informatics team will share with you 5 lessons we heard from USAID staff that manage digital government programming.
The first of these lessons is to budget for change management. Anyone who has implemented a digital government program knows that it's not just about the technology. A successful e-government initiative requires reimagining processes and making sure they align with organizational incentives. And we can't forget about the analog systems that run alongside the tech. So what lesson learned did our interviewees share? To budget for change management from the outset. In the work plan, include extra time so that you can adapt to unanticipated delays, and include a budget for communication campaigns, process reengineering, and quality project management. Find an internal champion. A critical factor to success of e-government programs is the presence of champions who work for the partner country government. Champions help the implementing partner establish relationships and USAID to align activities with the government's priorities and ensure that temporary projects can create sustainable change. It is equally important to engage a diverse set of internal champions that includes CIOs and political appointees, as well as career bureaucrats.
So, what other lessons learned did USAID staff and implementing partners highlight? One other was to design for the digital divide from the outset of the project. Technology can exacerbate existing power dynamics, and digital government initiatives are no different. Digital government can widen the gap between those who can access technology and those who cannot. Projects, especially those that engage citizens directly, need to consider at the beginning how people may be impacted by the newly digitized process. How could differences in mobile phone ownership, internet connectivity, gender, and literacy impact people's access to a service? Next up, we have mitigate obstacles to providing effective support. When it comes to donor dynamics, donors often operate on short activity timelines, yet digital government efforts can take years across administrations. Sectoral funding directives can make it difficult for donors to really fund cross-sectoral efforts, which can sometimes have the unintended effect of creating silos and other inefficiencies. So given these dynamics, what did our interviewees suggest? They suggested creating integrated multi-year project management teams that can help ensure that the government can carry on those projects after donor funding ends. They also highlighted really tapping into existing partner government coordination bodies, meeting people where they are.
Plan for political change. To be sustained over time, digital government initiatives must plan for the reality of political change due to a general election, a coup, or a vote of no confidence. To address this possibility, examine reporting lines, budgets, and incentives from the point of view of potential political change. Ask questions such as, would an administration change put people at risk? How could control of this digital system affect people, especially vulnerable populations? How sensitive is the data? What could happen if it's leaked? Thinking through these questions from the beginning can help us ensure that digital government efforts can be sustained through political change when it makes sense, or decommissioned quickly when people could be put at risk. These are just 5 out of 12 lessons that were unearthed by the research. Do you have a lesson you want to share with us? Want to learn more? Contact our informatics team at devinfo@usaid.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, USAID colleagues, for these valuable lightning talks. Speaking of USAID, we are thrilled that Samantha Power has chosen to join us today to offer another timely conversation on embracing today's digital age to advance inclusive development. Samantha Power currently serves as administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development. Prior to leading USAID, Ms. Power served in a variety of senior-level public service roles as a professor and as a decorated journalist. Administrator Power will begin with her own remarks, and then we'll enter into conversation with Temie Giwa-Tubosun, CEO and founder of LifeBank, Africa's healthcare supply engine. Their fireside chat will dig into the critical role of locally led organizations and technology startups in addressing difficult development challenges and empowering marginalized and underserved communities. Please join me in welcoming Samantha Power.
Thank you so much, Shirin, for that kind introduction and for your role in today's really important event. I'm really pleased to be with you, and I'm going to start by offering some thoughts about the intersection of technology and development, a topic on which I know our audience has a lot of knowledge, and then I'm really looking forward to the Q&A with Temie after this, and really grateful for all that people have put into pulling this incredibly important conference and event together. Temie's work uses technology to match excess blood supplies to hospitals in need. And when you think about it, that's exactly the kind of innovation we should be upholding and expanding. I also want to acknowledge Doreen Bogdan-Martin, whom I think many of you heard from earlier this morning, and who is in the running to be the next Secretary General of the International Telecommunications Union. And this union is the most important agency you've never heard of, one that will quite literally determine the future of the internet. And we are confident that Doreen will be a leader who will advance its development in a manner consistent with our shared values. And again, those values are very contested right now around the world. We all know the famous saying, there's an app for everything. Well, it turns out there's even an app for enduring a war. For many of those in Ukraine fleeing violence, at what was for many a very unexpected turn of events, there wasn't time to gather up passports or internal documents as Putin's missiles rained down upon them and their neighborhoods and their families. IDs and emergency funds may have been destroyed along with their homes. And regardless of documentation, every Ukrainian inside and outside the country desperately needed access to funds, to a way of getting by, to surviving. And that's where something called DIA comes in. I know that DIA's business applications that were touched upon, I think, earlier this morning. But in a nutshell, DIA is an app that was originally designed to simplify bureaucracy. And it has now been repurposed by Ukrainians for wartime. DIA creates a digital ID, and it's recognized by both local Ukrainian authorities and the border guards of neighboring countries where so many Ukrainians are fleeing. DIA enables round-the-clock access to television and radio stations at a time when information itself can be life-saving. DIA allows citizens to report on enemy troop movements. DIA even allows people to donate to the army. And its kind of core use, the one where we are working with the government to support at USAID, is DIA is providing access to emergency funds and government assistance so that Ukrainians who have been displaced or who are vulnerable in other ways can weather the conflict. DIA, if you're going to hear this word DIA shows us that when well-designed, accessible, and focused on people's needs, technology can save lives. And DIA's success doesn't only come from its usefulness, it also owes its impact here during the war to the resilience of Ukraine's broader digital ecosystem. And this is an ecosystem whose strength is attributable to direct investments from the Ukrainian government over a period of years. You can't build an ecosystem in a flash, right? This is years and years of investment. Ukraine enjoys far-reaching connectivity. It has strong cybersecurity capabilities that are tested virtually every hour of every day. And it had nearly 5,000 internet service providers as of December 2021. So by 2 months before the war, 5,000 ISPs. Its workforce is incredibly digitally literate. At last measure, January 2021, roughly 30 million Ukrainians use the internet. And Ukraine's digital policies and regulations helped build trust in the nation's digital ecosystem and the technology it supports. After DIA's launch back in 2020 by the Ukrainian Ministry of Digital Transformation, DIA had 13 million users. So again, that was even before the Russian invasion. That's in a country of 44 million. Its wild success in such a short period of time in getting used by citizens is an accomplishment, because let's remember again, this is a government created, government supported app, and bureaucracy isn't generally all that hip. Even just having a ministry of digital transformation, I think, tells you something about the direction that the Ukrainian government was going before the war, a direction that made Putin, of course, crazy, because these kinds of innovations will allow for much greater integration with the democratic world in a manner that Putin, of course, viewed as threatening. Ukraine's national commitment to digital resilience was born, though, in part from dealing with 8 years of cyber attacks and onslaughts of disinformation from the Russian Federation. And I'm really proud of the work that USAID has done over the years in helping Ukraine preempt and counter such cyber attacks, investments we've made over many years in Ukraine's cyber infrastructure, cybersecurity, alongside investments we have made in technology like DIA. I will say, though, and this is something of a confession, is I think that what we've realized is that prior to the war, we had not invested in the underlying ecosystems that allowed the app to work so well. So that those investments, I think when we look back, are some of the most critical investments that have allowed DIA to work. And I think the lesson there as a community, yes, we need apps, but we also need, again, to make those investments in the ecosystem that allow those apps to function. And to build a broader digital ecosystem is to support the success and versatility of apps like DIA. So investing in both is critical if we are to make foreign assistance more impactful, but also more inclusive. By 2019, it was hard to think of one aspect of life that wasn't somewhat digitized. I think all of you can identify with this. Banking, shopping, dating, everything seemed to be online. And that year, which was less than 30 years after the creation of the World Wide Web, 4.1 billion people were using the internet. Now, why did I choose 2019? Of course, because it was before the COVID-19 pandemic, which has only accelerated those trends. As schools closed, businesses shuttered, government offices, limited services, for those with accessible internet, the digital economy allowed life to continue as normally as the pandemic would allow. Kids around the world, including my own begrudgingly, took classes online and tried to keep up their education. In-person meetings, of course, took place over video. Businesses shifted to e-commerce and online retail, sometimes lodging huge gains. And governments around the world, from Togo to the Philippines, continued delivering essential services to their citizens digitally when they were not able to do so physically. Digital tools have also become essential to battling COVID itself. Public health organizations, medical professionals, and hospitals were able to use digital geospatial and mapping technology to track cases. And we would be nowhere in our massive effort to vaccinate the world without digital technology in helping us deliver vaccines and keep track of who has received what dose at what time, while also being able to track who the most vulnerable populations are that we need to prioritize and target. In 2021, the number of people using the internet had spiked to 4.9 billion. And that's almost 2/3 of the global population. That's a 9% increase in just 2 years over the course of the pandemic. But with digital progress has also come digital repression, and in some cases, a widening digital divide. Around 2.9 billion people still can't access the internet, cannot. And that gap has far-reaching implications for meeting development and humanitarian needs, especially when the People's Republic of China is all too eager to fill that gap. And this is a government that censors social media, uses the internet to push state-sponsored disinformation and expand government surveillance, even taking advantage of COVID-19 to do so. Such tactics could very well be contagious. Around the world, Beijing is investing heavily in digital ecosystems in developing countries where USAID is already working. And these investments are creating environments ripe for digital repression. We're seeing many more internet shutdowns, much more online censorship, and generalized and targeted surveillance and data collection. But while technology can indeed be weaponized, as we are seeing, the truth is that digitization isn't going anywhere. Connectivity this year in 2022 and all the years that lie ahead is not a luxury of any kind, it is a necessity. And if we are to shape our planet for the better, we must make digitization a central tenet of our work. USAID, since the beginning, has embraced digitization. Back in 1996, the agency began coordinating the activities of something called the Leland Initiative, which granted $15 million over 5 years to expand internet connectivity and electronic technologies in more than 20 African countries. That's a long time ago. I remember my own laptop at that time, which is about as heavy as my desk here, and my cell phone, I think, was the size of a milk carton. But those were just the beginnings. And in the decades since, USAID has supported, coordinated, and co-founded efforts to use technology to strengthen economies and increase social mobility. And we see the profound impact of this in providing mobile technology to women in developing countries, in digitizing cash transfers and payments along the lines of what DIA is doing in Ukraine, and using these technologies to minimize corruption in judicial systems. We've supported global partnerships like the Better Than Cash Alliance, the Alliance for Affordable Internet, and the Digital Impact Alliance. And these, I think, show the power of building movements alongside donors and like-minded partners. As digital technology has become more central to our lives, USAID's commitment to digitization has grown as well. In April 2020, just a couple months into the pandemic, USAID launched its first ever digital strategy, which outlined the necessity of open, inclusive, and secure digital ecosystems to the agency's broader development work, acknowledging, of course, the importance of digital technology to our programs. That emphasis helped us fight COVID-19. Thanks to the digital health vision, which was the first sector-specific plank of that digital strategy, we began more deliberately strengthening countries' digital health systems. And that is going to have knock-on benefits, of course, for health and welfare well beyond this pandemic. That means systems like mHero, a text messaging platform that uses national health worker registries to directly connect health agencies with remote doctors and nurses. The platform was created in the wake of Ebola in West Africa, that big Ebola epidemic, But today, mHero is still in use in Liberia to share critical information about COVID-19 with health workers. So this is our commitment as an agency, to make open, inclusive, and secure technology not an afterthought, but the foundation of our work, and to expand digital development itself to be more accessible, equitable, and responsive. That means working with digital entrepreneurs who are already driving change in their communities. Innovators like Temie, who we'll hear from shortly, whose company, as I mentioned, is tackling blood supply shortages in Nigeria, and who has now expanded her efforts into Kenya and Ethiopia. It means enabling every country and every citizen to embrace digital transformation, which means strengthening digital literacy among marginalized populations and bringing entire communities online for the first time. And it means meeting the needs of individual communities. That means using everything from digital financial services to help shopkeepers in Kumasi, to helping anti-corruption champions in San Salvador monitor government spending. Now, I'm proud to launch 3 new initiatives to aid those efforts. The first is USAID's Digital Literacy Primer. This is a tool to educate agency staff and partners on the importance of digital literacy and how it can be incorporated into USAID programming in every sector and mission. This builds USAID understanding of digital literacy. It will encourage staff to share lessons and best practices so that we are better able to empower the individuals we work with across sectors to enter the digital economy, in many cases for the first time. I'm also pleased to announce the 2022 Digital Development Awards. The Digital Development Awards are open to any USAID-funded projects and activities that use digital technology, support digital entrepreneurs or innovators, or expand connectivity or access to digital services. Past winners of the DGs, I think they go by, have helped minimize corruption and enhance transparency in the Kyrgyz judicial system, for example. They've provided real-time data to strengthen health information systems in Indonesia and improve fishery sustainability and data collection in the Asia Pacific. Finally, I'm pleased to share that USAID's first ever artificial intelligence action plan is going live this week. Artificial intelligence is poised to increase global GDP by 16% by 2030. But as we have seen in democratic and authoritarian countries alike, artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms used in technology like facial recognition, data collection, and local tracking can be repurposed for digital repression. And while we should never underestimate the possibility or the potency of repression, the solution cannot be turning our backs on the promise of digitization, but doing everything in our power to manage the risks, which are very real. And in that spirit, the Artificial Intelligence Action Plan offers a roadmap to navigate the use of our AI in our programming. The plan outlines and commits a vision for responsible artificial intelligence and provides ways for USAID and its partners to strengthen digital ecosystems and partnerships to preempt its risks. We have made great strides at USAID to build digital technology into our programming, strengthening policies around digitization, building skills among the workforce and in our own programs, especially for women and girls, and expanding internet access. But we have more work to do as an agency and as a broader development community. To the USAID employees here today, I urge you to think more broadly about the role that digital technologies can play in your work. Think about how to repurpose existing technologies, like the Ukrainian government did on the fly in wartime conditions with DIA, and help us use existing tools to address gaps in the digital ecosystem that support those technologies. To our current partners in government or in civil society, work with local partners who are leading digital change and innovation in their communities. Listen to them, invest in them, remember the risks, and focus not only on infrastructure and economy, which comes very naturally to our development community, but on digital rights and governance as well. And to those who may not have formally worked with USAID before, even if you choose not to partner with us, please join us in our commitment to embrace a democratic vision of digital transformation, one that emphasizes digital literacy for those who need it most and that promotes human rights, privacy, and justice for all. In Ukrainian, this word dia that I've used so many times today means action. Let us take action today. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the conversation with Temie.
Thank you, Administrator Power, for such an important reminder of how digital technology accelerates development and of the work we all have to do to overcome the challenges of digital technology, ensuring at all times it remains a tool for good. My name is Temie Giwa-Tubosun. I am the founder and CEO of LifeBank. LifeBank is a health tech company building the supply chain that powers healthcare across Africa. Our platform enables hospitals to access the most critical medical supplies, including blood, oxygen, medical consumables, and medical equipment on time and the right condition. We launched operations in 2016 and now operational in Nigeria, Kenya, and Ethiopia, like you mentioned. We plan to expand to emerging markets around the world. Throughout our growth, digital technology, has been key to our mission of digitizing the supply chain across the countries we operate in, and an inroad to continuous expansion. We're committed to this because we understand just how important the scale of the problem we're solving is, and how I'll share a story that exemplifies this. When COVID-19 hit Africa, we discovered that at least 40% of vital medical equipment, including ventilators and oxygen concentrators, were out of service in healthcare facilities in Africa. To make it worse, there was a limited number of biomedical engineers to repair this equipment and led to countless avoidable deaths. In response, we at LifeBank designed QUIP as a national register for medical equipment essential in the fight against COVID-19. QUIP also connected hospitals to biomedical engineers for the maintenance and repair of their equipment. We signed up many vendors and hospitals, helping them maintain equipment quality and improve patient outcomes. As we continue to slowly recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, QUIP has morphed from a national register in a time of emergency into an asset management application that connects trained biomedical engineers to jobs and provides a transparent platform for organizations to donate equipment to underserved communities and to upkeep those equipment as well. QUIP currently provides access over thousands of biomedical engineers and equipment vendors. This story represents our innovation and technology philosophy at LifeBank. We're committed to solving the hardest problems healthcare facilities face by building a mix of high technology and low technology solutions. These solutions are forward-looking and innovative and inclusive, but always accessible. Innovation for the last mile like this are not always easy. Sometimes it's working to get medical consumables to Borno State, the very last mile location you can imagine. We were able to do this work distributing critical supplies to Borno State through a partnership with Merck for Mothers, a global initiative to increase health outcomes for mothers, powered by Credit Suisse, USAID, DFC, and Merck, a pharmaceutical company. Other times, it's building blockchain products to enhance patient safety and increase trust. But every time, it is a commitment to solving the hardest problems and innovating to supporting last mile healthcare. Administrator Power, what are some of the ways in which Usaid is working to support local innovators and startups, particularly those led by women like me, who are trying to make a difference in their communities, but struggle to secure funding, which prevents us from having any real impact at scale?
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing that very inspiring journey. And it does make us want to think about how best to find people like you who are out there in the world struggling to get the financing they need, but who have the ideas, who have the local knowledge. And I guess that's where I'd start. I mean, first of all, the answers are often right in front of our noses, right? In the communities in which we work, USAID has missions in 80 countries, programs in 100 countries. Over the years, we've become more dependent, I think, on financing often large US-based, contractors or larger organizations, because it has been quite challenging to work with USAID with all the paperwork burdens and regulatory requirements and so forth. And so that has led to fewer investments in local partners, but we are really trying to address that as best we can, working with Congress, of course, to do so. So I would say, I think, again, an emphasis on really getting out and about in the community and seeing the hustle and the kinds of solutions and idea entrepreneurs like you who are out there, that's part of it. But we also actually have a dedicated funding program that you probably know about called the Development Innovation Ventures. And it's an open innovation program that offers grant funding based on a tiered evidence approach that seeks to, as everyone would, maximize impact per dollar spent. And this is sector agnostic, it's region agnostic, but it's about, in a sense, focusing on solutions that demonstrate evidence of impact, cost effectiveness, and an articulated pathway to scale and to sustainability. And anyone, anywhere can apply at any time. We also have prizes, challenges. You probably heard about grand challenges over the years. We have hackathons, which can be geared towards solving specific problems in specific communities. And we've seen a number of instances where organizations that receive seed or growth stage funding from USAID have then gone on, of course, to receive follow-on funding from institutional investors or from the public sector. So we are kind of, as a development agency, more about the kind of pilot phase and then using our networks and our connections to help position our partners to scale and making the introductions or seeking to find, again, those larger sources of resources as the ideas go forward. And here I would just pivot to also USAID's role in pressing the private sector to better tackle the responsibility that technologists often must carry in their work. And just to give one example, we're partnering with the Mozilla Foundation to launch what they've called responsible computer science challenges. And this is in some of USAID's partner countries. And the goal here is to shift how computer scientists are trained so that responsibility and ethics, which really were absent on campuses all around the world in core computer science classes, where those elements are better integrated into computing curricula. It's a growth area, but there's a lot of room to grow, unfortunately. And that is going to have major bearing on what factors companies are taking into account as they seek to grow their own market shares, but often in the past, maybe not sufficiently cognizant of some of the harms that could accompany that growth. Last thing I'd say, just to be very concrete, is that if you are out there and are a startup or want to work with USAID or access one of these programs, we now have a website that we launched last year called workwithusaid.org. And that provides a wealth of information on funding opportunities, on our global partners, and on USAID's business forecasts. So that's a specific place to go for people who are interested, in addition to the Development Innovations Ventures Fund, which is also up on our website. Thank you.
Great. Another question. These challenges that I mentioned are not unique to LifeBank. Startups across Africa, like you mentioned, are probably in much of the world, face similar obstacles. What is USAID doing to address these critical gaps in country digital ecosystems and national health sectors, for an example? So now shifting from individual startups to actually looking at the systems, the ecosystem, and the national both digital sectors and health sectors.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tried to emphasize, the importance of not just finding the entrepreneur or the app, but also to make these more systemic investments. Well, we, with the State Department, launched something called Pro ICT, and this is an effort to provide capacity building to help partner country governments, again, being present in so many developing countries in particular, helping those countries have the technical assistance they need to establish ICT policy and regulatory frameworks that are more likely to enable an inclusive digital economy. So that's one example, is to be thinking about the rules and regulations that would potentially inhibit or accelerate the growth of startups like yours or companies like yours. On the funding gap, which is the other thing you mentioned, we recently launched Digital Invest, which is a blended finance program that seeks to mobilize private capital for ISPs building secure and reliable networks, and financial tech companies providing safe and inclusive products and platforms. And the idea there with Digital Invest is to drive financial inclusion, knowing just how critical the digital tools can be to bringing women and other marginalized communities into the economy. And then the last thing I'd mention is we created something called the Digital Square. And this has been created with an eye to catalyzing co-investment in health sector digital infrastructure along the lines of some of what you were talking about. And Digital Square to date has gathered over $115 million from 15 funders. And that is in order to strengthen scalable software systems and support health systems digital transformation activities in 30 countries. So those are a few examples. There's more to say. And maybe just this came up in one of the prior lightning round talks, but just to say we with our bilateral and multilateral partners, we have been working on what was mentioned earlier, a charter for digital public goods, and we're hoping to launch this later this year. And I think even the fact that these norms have not been enshrined anywhere, is a problem. It's not easy to come up with a charter for digital public goods. But the idea is to enshrine all of this, to enlist countries to make commitments to build safe, trusted, and inclusive public infrastructure at scale. And again, we do this knowing that some of the trends are quite worrying about how the internet and that ecosystem itself is being misappropriated for ulterior ends, not to facilitate the creation of a startup or the empowerment of women, but really to gather and harvest data, on populations for other purposes. So I think this digital charter can be a good action forcing event to get countries and civil society to really engage about what kind of digital future do we want? Because again, the norms are part of the gap right now. It's not just the funding and the regulatory capacity. It's making sure that the spread of digital technology is being done in a manner that's sensitive to the rights of citizens.
Thank you, Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to thank Administrator Power for those powerful conversations and powerful remarks. We're really excited for the future of Usaid. Over to you.
Yes, and thank you, Temie. Thank you, Administrator Power, for this incredibly rich and insightful conversation. Thank you, GDDF community, for joining us for this session. If you enjoyed this session, you won't want to miss the rest of what's to come, including our next lightning talk on digital literacy, which Administrator Power referred to and previewed in her remarks. So stay tuned, it's coming up next.